So hey guys and girls, thank you for joining me today. We're having a very exciting week. We've got a lot of firmware announcements to talk about. Always nice to get an update and an upgrade, isn't it, in your camera gear for free? So that's exciting. It's like having a present for nothing from Nikon. So we're going to talk quite a bit about that. We've also got some new product releases that we'll talk about. Something's very interesting, and also some tips and tricks that I'd like to show you well later in the video. So let's start off with the first things first, and that is the range of firmware upgrades we just recently received for a lot of the modern Z mount cameras. Now we've got firmware upgrade for both the Z50 Mark II, the Z5 Mark II, and the Z6 Mark III. So that's fantastic that they all get a nice little upgrade and update, fixing some bugs and little fixes. It's not a major firmware upgrade, it's just a minor incremental one, but it's nice that they're included, and it's always great to get the updates and the refreshing and make sure everything's working and performing very well. So thanks Nikon for that. We're always grateful that we get those upgrades, and we know we're being thought of and appreciated. The major firmware upgrade though is actually with the Z8, and that's been very exciting because it's now a 3.00 firmware upgrade, and anytime there's a 3.0 or a 4.0 or a 5.0, you know that's a major improvement. It's thrown a whole lot of new features in. So the Z8 now has been upgraded with a lot of new features and fine-tuning adjustments and options in the menu system that are really, really handy. Now, some of them you may never use, but for those of you who do, they're really going to appreciate them. And there's a few in there that I particularly were excited about that I know I'm going to try and utilize now and play around with whenever I can. So the Z9 and the Z8 are almost identical. So whatever the Z8 has, I know the Z9 will have. Whether it will be a few months away, it will come very soon. And as for the other cameras down the line, as time goes on, they will also get whatever features that are possible to include. Some things are simply not possible because the mechanism is not there. But where it is, and it can be, I know that they will do their best to include them. So let's have a review. I'm going to have to get my little notepad out because there is so much to discuss, so I apologize for referring back to my notes all the time. But the first thing I want to talk about is the pixel shift with exposure and bracketing. So we've had pixel shift before, which is fantastic, but it's nice to have it so you've got your exposure bracketing options as well, and now you can make sure that you get the exact look and view that you want at the same time. So you can have all sorts of incremental options in how many exposures and bracketings, and you've got I think 4 sets of bracketing you can use now for your your f-stops, and that makes it really, really cool to make sure you get exactly the options you need to get the perfect shot every time. So that's something that can be used, particularly useful in things like wildlife. So I think that's a great option. Landscape photographers are also going to love that because now you can get multiple options of the depth of the photo. You can have pixel shift, which means you will get a lot higher resolution image, and with the bracketing option as well, you've got that scope of dynamic range. So that's a great little extra that they've added in, few extra options in amongst that pixel shift theme. So we're happy to see that. Another interesting one was the memo option. So in taking your photos, you were able in the previously to have a little snippet of audio in order to get some sort of extra details that may not show up in your metadata. So if you wanted to say talk about the location, you wanted to say, okay, I was at this angle and this time of day and this was happening, and I noticed that this bird was in this tree at that time of evening, and so on. Or you're doing an interview with someone, you're taking photos of an individual, but you would like to have some auxiliary information or even dialogue recorded just in case it comes in useful for later notes. And now you can do it in extra high quality audio. So previously you could take memo notes and have something filed away with your photos, but the information was this whatever microphone was in the camera, and which can be reasonable, but wouldn't it be nice to have very high quality audio? And that's what they're offering you now. So you can plug in all your very pro level microphones. You could have either lav mics plugged into the camera. You can have audio transmitter receivers and professional microphone gear, and you'll get absolutely high quality audio in those little memo notes. So a lot of people would think, well, that's a bit of overkill, but if you're a professional photographer and you're doing events such as, for example, politics or sports, and they're like at the Olympics, and you need to add in information or little interviews maybe with that individual that you would like to contribute to your news team or your broadcast crew, it'd be great to have that in high quality audio. And that's the option that they're giving you as well now. That's an extra new thing. So that's a thumbs up for that. I always love good audio. In fact, I'm trying to use really good audio now. I've got a transmitter receiver, a shotgun microphone above my head, and I'm trying to get the best audio for you, so I can understand the use for that if you're doing sort of pro broadcasting, etc., and taking photos for either politics or news items. It would be nice to have that information that you can share and record for yourself for memory's sake or for broadcasting. Here's one that I will particularly be using quite a lot, I believe, and that is the C15 option. Now what is that? That means that when you're doing your continuous high photo, you can do it in traditionally 10, 20 and 30 increments frames per second. But now they've added 15 in as well. So you can go from, for example, 10 to 15 to 30 very quickly, and it's in the menu simply, and it's quick to access and get a hold of, and it's another option you can program in very quickly. So you could always program any frames per second you wanted, but isn't it nice just to have the in-body stuff there ready to go very quickly and accessible, so you're not fiddling around in menu systems trying to find the exact file you need to change for the frame rate you want. So at 15 frames per second, that's something I use a lot when I'm doing birding photography, for example. I find that an extremely useful general purpose range. So I'll sort of set it to that, but isn't it nice to have it in there in the option menu, so you can go quickly from your 10 to 15, 20 to 30, and it's a great little addition they put in there to make things smooth for you. So another addition they've added in, which I think is a really cool feature, is with high-res zoom. And high-res zoom, what is that? That is when you have a zooming lens, and what you can do is you shoot your videos in very high definition imagery, whether it be 4K, 6K or 8K, depending on the camera options you have, and you want to zoom into the image using this digital way of zooming in without being mechanical necessarily. You can use that, and now you've still got the auto eye detect on the little box over the eye visible to you, so you can check and confirm that you've got focus every time. So previously it would always have focus, it would gain the focus, but as you were zooming in and moving back and forth, you couldn't actually see the box retain onto the eye, and it might have made you a bit unsettled or nervous as to whether you're actually keeping focus intact. Right now, when I'm looking at the monitor on my ZFC that I'm filming with now, I can see the yellow box hovering over my eye the whole time, so I know that I'm in focus. And that's really reassuring now that they've added that into that high-res zoom feature, so that you have the confidence of knowing you're in focus every time, and it just gives you that feeling of relaxation and confidence, doesn't it? So that's a nice little addition they put in, so thank you for that. Another addition they've put in is for manual focusing. So when you're doing manual focus, and this can be very relevant for landscape photographers, they don't always use autofocus, because it's very nice to be able to choose the exact subject you want and know that it's going to be staying on that subject and the focus isn't drifting on to something else it's trying to hunt and find. So if you set on to manual focus mode, you can select an object to be the primary target, and you know it's going to stay there because it's manual, it's not moving on its own. But the difficulty was you had up to, say, 200% magnification, which is not too bad, but if the subject's a really long way away, you want to blow that up as much as possible. You want to guarantee you've got focus on it. Now they've given you a 400% magnification option when you're using manual focus. So that's really cool. It's just doubled now the detail you can find, and fine-tuning detail you can get to make sure you nailed that subject you wanted in focus 100%. And so when you're doing things like macro photography, that's also relevant for that. So landscaping or macro photography, when you want to zoom right into the detail to make sure you've nailed that very shallow depth of field, and for macro that's how it is, it's always going to be very shallow depth of field. It's nice to make sure that what is in focus, that little bit that is actually what you wanted in focus. So 400% is going to make that so much easier. So that's an awesome little addition they've given, and I'm sure we'll all find that useful for some feature in the future. Another feature they've whacked in there in menu A14 will be maximum aperture live view. Now what's all that about? Well, what this means here is a really cool feature actually. What it means is if you're shooting in a low light situation, or you're choosing on purpose to shoot in a situation where you need say f5.6 or even f8 in order to get everybody in focus and have the scene set the way you wish. But of course that does darken the image quite a bit. And when you want to check composition and focus and exposure, etc., it can be a bit awkward. So what happens is you can choose an option now at A14 where you can have your maximum aperture for your setting it up and checking, and then flick straight back to f8 to film. So that just means you're not having to adjust all the features all the time. You're not remembering or forgetting to go back to f5.6 or f8 or whatever, f4 or whatever it is you want to actually do the filming in. You can now check the composition in your maximum aperture, whether that be f1.2 or f1.8 or f2.8 or f4, whatever it happens to be. But the option to be able to check that nice and brightly and clear and then go back to filming instantaneously is a brilliant feature. So in low light situations it's great, but for just general filming and being able to confirm to yourself that yes, everything is in focus and it's right, this idea is a fantastic feature, and I'm very pleased to see it additioned in. And finally on this Z8, one of the main features that I've found particularly exciting is focus limiter, where you can now choose an exact focal range that the camera will focus in, that little bracket if you like. So for example, and I've used this illustration myself many times, I've had frustration with the cameras, even my good Z9, which does a great job of autofocus, will sometimes just go straight from a bird straight to the background, or straight from the bird to a tree or shrub in the front just before the creature, and that's very exasperating to have it hunting focus all the time. So what you can do now is you can set the focus range, so instead if you've got from 5 to 20 meters, which is quite a large range, what you can do now is you get it down to almost an exact couple of inches. So you can go say from 4 meters to 4.3 meters, or you can go from 5 meters to 6 meters only, or limit it down from 3 meters to 3.5 meters, or a very narrow bracket of range, which means that if you're getting a bird and it's in a nest and a tree, but there's branches just behind and there's some shrubs just in front, you don't have to worry about it hunting those branches and distractions. It's only going to now focus in that very small range where the bird is. And that means you're going to nail focus every time, and that's what a breath of fresh air that is, without all that hunting nonsense going on. So that's something as an option you can choose to put in there. You don't have to use it, but it's a great option when that's really important to you. And this can be useful for people as well. But let's say, for example, you're doing a news interview and you've got a person that you want to focus on, you're filming an interview with this person, but there's distracting people walking past behind or people walking in front. It's not going to snap to them all the time. It's only going to stick in that range of focus that you've chosen, which can be as little as the person's head width. So if you choose for the person's 4 meters away, you say, all right, I'm going to choose focus only between 4 meters and 4.5, you're pretty much going to nail that person's head every time. And it saves all those distractions being a bother to you or fearful you're going to lose focus in the middle of the interview. So that's a terrific option. I think that's going to be useful for so many people so often that I think that's a brilliant strategy that Nikon have done to incorporate that. And what a wonderful feature it is. So that's very exciting. Okay, so we're finished with that firmware upgrade discussion right now. Now I'd like to move on to some other accessories and new releases and things that are coming out on the market at the moment. So yeah, there is a very exciting lens coming out on the market, and it's a Tamron lens coming out. It's a reinvention, as it were, of the 17 to 28. So this is a like Mark II version of that, or even a Mark III you could call it, but the lens is a 16 to 30. So what they've done is they've gone a little bit wider from 17 to 16, and they've gone a little bit longer from 28 to 30. So they're giving you those extra 3 mils of scope. Now it's still a 2.8 lens, it's still light and very compact, and a great 67 mil filter thread, which means of course that's brilliant for your filters you've got that are not expensive or difficult to find. Apart from that, it's also internal focusing, which means you don't have a barrel coming in and out, which is a little bit distracting and a bit of a worry for weather resistance. So who's going to be using a lens like a 16 to 30? Well, a lot of it's landscape photographers or architectural photographers, and sometimes they have to worry about weather conditions, don't they? So if you're out in the bush and it starts raining or whatever, you don't necessarily want a barrel coming in and out, sucking up moisture or dust. So having it internal focusing just gives you a little bit more confidence that it's going to be sealed up and safe. But the range is what really excites me, because the reason I've never gone for another wide zoom recently is because nothing there was very attractive to me. Let's think about it. Nikon had a 14 to 30, but it was an f4. Now that's not a bad lens. I've owned it and it was actually pretty good at what it did, but I never really needed 14 mils. That was like super wide and created a lot of distortion. And the fact that it was f4 was a little bit disappointing when I wanted to have a brighter image. So really it wasn't a bad lens in any way, and the 82 filter thread was okay with it, but I find it just wasn't ideal. Then there was, of course, the 14 to 24, which was a nice 2.8 aperture lens and very high quality, great image. But the problem was it was extremely expensive at over $4,000 Australian. So price-wise, it was a bit outrageous. And secondly, the zoom range was actually quite small. 14 to 24 is quite a small little range. It's very wide, and that's really all it is. So having something that's like 16 to 30 just gives me that scope that's more suitable for me. Might not be for you. If you need that ultra wide situation, well, you might want a different lens. But for me, 16 is more than wide enough, and 30 is pretty damn good long. Now, would I have liked it to go on to say 35? Yes. I think anything like I was always hoping for a replacement of the old D lens, you know, the 17 to 35 2.8 D lens. I used to love that lens. It worked great on the Z system with an FD to Z adapter, and it was pretty cool. But I'm really trying to go all Z mount now and just keep everything modern and fresh. So I was looking for them to replace that. Nikon haven't bothered to do so as yet. They may in the future. But right now this Tamron version, this 16 to 30, which is coming out very soon at an f2.8, I think is a brilliant option. It weighs about 450 grams, which is very lightweight and compact. And I think that's a great little accessory to have in the lens bag now. So I'm very keen. As soon as that comes out, I'll probably be snapping that up, and then I can do some real live reviews on it. But in the meantime, I'm very excited it's being released. I think that's the perfect option for me anyway, and I'm happy to have it as an option. So I was just talking to you about new releases like that 16 to 30 mm Tamron lens, which I think is very exciting. Probably be about $1,000, maybe $1,200 Australian, I think, when it comes out, maybe $800 US. We'll wait and see what the price is when it comes out. Could be more, could be less, but I know it's going to be a lot more affordable than many of the S-line lenses. Probably not as good, but certainly more affordable. When we talk about new releases, and I spoke recently in one of my videos about this wonderful little unit, little Viltrox. It's a Z1, that's what it's called. And it's just a very small, compact, rechargeable flash unit, and particularly good for your crop sensor cameras because it's so light and low profile, and of course with the vintage look that it has and name, it is a vintage lens specifically. It works very well on the ZF and the ZFC. But however, whatever camera you use it on, I was just thinking about it as how wonderful this would be as an option for travel, to add a little bit of extra light to your subject. Now, it's not a super powerful unit, but it's powerful enough that it compensates for any, say, if you have a variable aperture lens you want to take on holidays because they're light and compact. If you have a little, for example, a 24 to 70 f4 lens, that's a compact lens. It folds up quite nicely and compact. But at f4 you might think, oh, sometimes that's a bit dark. Well, now you've got a little compact flash you can add. The f4 factor doesn't make any difference, does it? Because you can add light as you need it. So in that way, that'd be a really terrific little travel accessory with one light zoom. So whether that be, for example, if you've got a ZFC or a Z50 or something like that, you could have that 16 to 50 little compact silver lens with you, and that's equivalent to say a 24 to 75 sort of range, and that gives you a great option for, well, one lens does all and it's compact and light. And with this as a light as well, it doesn't matter that it's going up to f6.3 or whatever at its 70mm length. It's not important because you can add light to the subject and make sure everything's bright and well lit. So having this as an option with you for how cheap it is, which is, you know, was it $50 Australian or something? So cheap, $50 US I think it was, or $75 Australian, for something so inexpensive to have with you, to guarantee light, and to know you don't have to worry about batteries anywhere in the world you are because it's just USB charging. I mean, it's as complicated as charging as doing this. There you go. You can do that in your car, you can do it at home, anywhere. You've got a power plug. Very, very simple situation. So I think that's a great accessory to take with you traveling, and when you've got just maybe a little camera lens, a little kit lens on your camera for traveling and keeping light, brilliant system. So I'm just highly recommending that again because I think it is a wonderful little rig to bring around with you. Another thing I would like to talk to you about is this system here. Now, I've spoken to this again in the past, this new camera bag I purchased, which is a think tank camera bag, and this is the 50 version. Sorry, this is the 50 V3. So what does that mean? Well, it just means it's suitable for a full body camera with a grip and a zoom lens. And you see here it has a little extendable area here. I'm sort of squishing it up and down to show you that it moves. Well, this can be compacted or extended, and you can have a little bit of extra length if you've got, say, a 70 to 200. Right now, I'll show you what I have in there. I've shown you before, but I'll show you again. Just open it up, because there is a little trick to it that I've done recently, and I spoke about it in the past, but I can't remember if I actually showed you. So I'd like to show you what's going on. So here is the camera in the bag there. You can see it there, my Z9 with the battery grip on it, and it fits in there very generously. It's not like it's a tight fit. It fits in there very easily and well. So I'm just going to bring that out and illustrate what's going on here. So I have this lens here, which is the Tamron 35 to 150. And that's a great lens for versatility, and it's every bit as long as I'd ever need on any travel situation. So 35 is pretty wide. You can take nice scenery shots with that, but sometimes you might just want to go a little wider. I'm never going to really want to go a lot longer than 150mm. That's actually pretty long for a general purpose travel-y sort of lens, function lens. It's more than adequately enough. But what I found I can do with this is, because that's reasonably compact when retracted in, there's a little pouch option in the bottom of this, and if I'll pull that out, I've got a little barrier in here, a thick foam pad to make everything safe and secure and make sure there's no damage. But in the bottom here, I've snuck in a 24mm lens. Now that 24mm lens could be 16mm lens or a 20mm lens. You can get a little 20mm compact lens from Viltrox cheaply if you want an ultra wide. For me, the 24 prime is great because it's an f1.8, so it's a nice bright aperture, and that syncs perfectly in with this lens, which starts at f2 and goes to f2.8, but a lot of the range is on average about 2.5, say. But this one at 1.8 is nice and bright, and if you want something ultra wide, 24mm is a good general purpose wide angle lens on a full frame camera. So what I'll be able to do is extending this pouch that it has, and I'll just fling that over out the way. This pouch can retract, you can zip it up and get it out the way, so it's a little bit more tidy, but you can extend it out, opening up the zip, and then that's exactly the room you need to put a little prime in, whatever that may be. So you can fit this 24mm in quite easily, certainly fit a little compact lens such as this in, or a 20mm. And if you want to go even wider, a 16mm will fit in there when it's compacted up, when you've got the lens hood back on it itself. You can get even a 16mm Viltrox lens in there. So if you want a wide with you, as I say, you just pop that into the bottom all the way down. Then you have your little padding, little Velcro pad. You place that down just on top of that lens to make sure it's secured around where that pouch is. Put that down, it's quite quick and simple to pad in. Make sure it's safe and protected, and then when you put your camera in, everything's perfectly sealed up and safe and beautiful, and there you go, you've got two lenses in there, and when you need the ultra wide with you, it's in the same kit. So you can just pull that lens out, you swap the lens over, put the big lens back in the bag, and everything's safe and secure, but you've got access to a nice wide as well. And for me, the nice wide is that 24mm, that's more than adequate enough. So I'm really liking this whole think tank system. This is the 50, it does come also in a longer 150 setup, which is even longer, where you could have a 70 to 200 in there and another prime extended out, or you can have even your big birding lens such as this one here, which is it's a 150 to 600, or your Nikon 180 to 600 zoom. You could have that in that bag as well. Not in this one, but in that one you could definitely. So this is the 50 version think tank. I think it's a brilliant system when you've got a full body camera and you've also got an extra prime as well you need to take along, or an accessory of some other sort. But yeah, have now from 24mm all the way to 150 in one little package there. That's a brilliant option. I'm very excited about it. And by the way, if you get that unit, please don't forget to have the belt with it. It does come with a belt that secures it and supports 50% of the weight. So you sling that over your shoulder with the strap, with the belt as well. That's half the weight taken off either way. You don't even know you're carrying it. And that's quite a weighty bit of gear, but very comfortable to use. So that's an exciting system, and I wanted to bring you through that. Another thing accessory-wise that I think is worth bringing out and talking about is this. Now, recently I got a little package here, and you might say, what's all this sort of stuff going on? Well, here, this is interesting. I've got little satchels, and in these little satchels I've made a small, a medium, a large, and an extra large of rubber washers. And you might say, what are you talking about, Mark? Rubber washers, what do you need those for? Well, I just open it up to show you so I can illustrate. I'll pull one out of the medium, and this is all I'm talking about here. So if you can see that, it's just simply a 3.5mm piece of rubber pushed into the shape of a a washer. And the reason of this is it helps with grip, it helps with vibration control, and it stops rubbing and scraping when you're putting metal on metal or carbon fibre. So if you're screwing something in and you're screwing something into a metal item, so let's say for example, I'm just trying to find something here out of reach. Everything's just out of my reach at the moment. I've got a little screw here and I want to bolt some apparatus to my camera body or tripod or whatever accessory it is. To have a rubber washer to be a barrier between those means A, you're not scratching the surface, so you're not damaging your delicate equipment. Sometimes it's plastic or it's carbon fibre or aluminium, and they can gouge and scratch quite easily. You couldn't possibly use anything like a star washer or a spring washer because it's going to damage the material, the metal will dig in. So this rubber washer will provide all the vibration protection you need and also grip and give you a nice protective barrier. So I've made a heap of these. This is basically what I've done. I've just made a lot of them in various different sizes. So I've got this one here. I'll just quickly illustrate. I've got a large one as well. I'll just pop that out. And I'll show you how I made them in just a moment. I'll just sort of show you a few of them. So there's some various sizes. This has got a 3/8 hole because I use this for things like tripods and various larger items. You can have smaller ones as well, right down to quite tiny ones. So what are they used for? Well, let me just illustrate. I'll show you further uses. You might be familiar with these. These are wonderful, and I'll just illustrate that's what they are. You can see the item and you can see it comes with a rubber washer on them. But here they are in application, and this is where you've got something like an L bracket, it could be a video rig as well, and you want to attach a camera strap to it. So this way you can attach a camera strap because there's no real practical way of just quickly clipping one on and off as you buy them. So this way you can put this little item on, comes with a rubber washer, and it just stops gouging up the aluminium and make sure it stays on and doesn't vibrate loose. So that's an interesting feature. Now another way you use these things as well is with this. Now I've got a cotton carrier system. The cotton carrier system has these little attachments, little buttons if you will. You put them onto your camera, you screw them in, and then of course you've got to screw them to the camera body. Now I'm just going to illustrate one here. So in order to fit it to your camera body, you need a screw. Now that screw and that plastic, it's quite hard plastic, is going to end up attached to your camera body. You need a rubber washer of some sort as a barrier to make sure that the vibration isn't there so it wiggles its way loose, and also to stop it scratching up the camera body. And so that's where these rubber discs come in so handy. So I found them very useful, and I've cut them up, plenty of them, and it doesn't hurt to have a whole lot. Now how do you make them? You might say, well, can't you just buy them? Well, of course you can buy them, you can, but they're not always going to be the exact size, quantity and whatever you need. So I'm just going to show you how simple it was for me to make them and how you'd put it together. So bear with me. So these are some of the things you need should you want to make them. You need a hammer, which most people have already. An old plank of wood, which I found in the garage, I found very useful. You will see by all the indentations here, if you can pick that up, that I've been using it quite a bit, making these washers. And then what you may have, if you don't already have it, you can certainly get one quite inexpensively online, they're not particularly expensive, is here a hollow leather punch set. Now, a punch set will do leather, but it'll also do your rubber. And so what I've found is I find the 3/8 version and the 1/4 version, and I use those to punch out holes. So just to illustrate very quickly what's going on. I'm not actually going to make one because it's too damn noisy. It'll drive you bonkers, right? But here we go. Here's a rubber strip. I bought this online from Clark Rubber, which is the company that we use in Australia. Purple Pig is another company we have that makes rubber products. But your average hardware store may have it too. But the thing is, you've got to buy a high quality rubber. You want something that's a good natural rubber that's reinforced and built with integrity. You don't want some cheap, nasty knockoff product that's really mostly synthetic and just disintegrates in no time. So this is a high quality rubber, 3.5 mils. You simply place it down here on your timber frame. You get your punch, whatever diameter you happen to be using at the time. Draw out your little circles. I use washers in order to use them as a template. So you have the circle hole exactly in the middle, draw around the outside of the ring, find the center, punch, you've got a perfect circle in the center, exactly the right size every time. So it's just punch, punch, punch. Just make sure you do it on a soft block of wood. This is pine, it's not expensive hardwood timber. If you have anything too hard, you're very likely to blunt your tool anyway. It'll eventually become blunt and soft and rounded at the edges. So to keep it sharp, soft wood, bang, bang, bang over the exact hole in the center, and then you just cut around with scissors the outside. So you can make it very simply. It's a quick to put together item. Excuse me while I'm just out of camera there for a sec. But yeah, I think that's a terrific idea to use these accessories to make sure everything's safe. So if you find it difficult to purchase exactly what you want, you can very simply make them yourself, and it's really not expensive. And I enjoy making these sort of things. This is not a burden for me. It's not something you say, oh no, Mark's got to make these, what a burden, what a hassle. I actually enjoy it. I find it a lot of fun to do it. So it's like tinkering in the garage and gives me something to do on the weekend. So that might not be your cup of tea. If you can buy them online, you're welcome to do that, but I'm just showing you a way you can make them at home. And the thing about making them at home is it's ultimately cheaper because you're buying bulk product, and secondly, you can make as many as you want. So I don't make just one or two, I'll make like 10 of each size. I'll have small, medium, large and extra large, and they're there ready whenever I need them. So that's something I've done recently that I thought was sort of quite interesting. So what we'll do is we'll conclude on one more subject, and the last subject is to refresh on cables. Very relevant to any sort of camera rig and situation is you need the right cables for the job. And I have mentioned this multiple times in other videos, but I'm just going to illustrate some cables that I have here. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is these ones here, which are the standard sort of a USB A to USB-C cable, and these are reasonably high quality ones. These are about $10 a pop. Maybe up to $15, and they do a pretty reasonable job of data transfer, and you can pair your phone and tablet and so on with them. But when it comes to actual camera gear, they're not really up to the job. So for camera gear, the minimum you really want is something like this. Or sorry, this one here. This one here in its package is an original Nikon. So this is the Nikon 3.2 fast charge, fast data transfer cable. Comes from Nikon. This is an excellent cable for downloading your files, your video, and for charging your camera. It's important to have something high quality. They're not cheap, all right? These are about $30 each one, but they're worth every cent when it comes to you see how fast the transfer speed is to download your files, so you're not waiting forever. And also it doesn't stop halfway. Very often I've tried to download like 1,000 files after a wedding or photos with birds and so on, and halfway through downloading these files on a cheaper cable, it'll stop halfway and just bottleneck and choke, and then you've got to start all over again, and you're always concerned you might lose some files or some sort of corruption. So having a high quality cable guarantees that not only is it fast and efficient, but you're not going to damage any of your files in the transfer process. I've recently bought these ones here, which are the same sort of thing, but this is USB-C to USB-C, and these are much more, these are about $30 each too. But the thing about these, I've got various lengths. You can see I've got a 1 meter version, a 1.5 meter version, and these are very high quality. Now these are the ones that are, and just excuse me a sec. So these are the ones that are 80 gigabytes per second and 240 watts of power capable. Now that's very high in its ratings, and the reason is because I use them for both charging and I use it for data transfer. So for example, in this little package I have here in front of the desk, I have a really good high volume ComCell power bank, and this is worth about 5 to 6 of the little 15C batteries. It's worth about 2.5 of the Nikon Z9 batteries for the grip in volume and ability. So it's a very capable unit, and I find this excellent for charging the cameras or maintaining power while doing video over long periods of time. So if you're running video for say an hour or 2 hours and you need it to run continuously, then this is the sort of item you want. But what sort of cable you need one of these very high-end, high-quality cables that will do the job of transferring the power and do the job of transferring files afterwards. So you only need one cable, does everything. Yes, they're expensive, I understand, but they're really worth every cent when it comes to the performance and the capability. You don't want your power cutting out halfway. You might have all the battery power in the world here, but if the cable's unable to transfer the power to the camera capably, then it's just going to shut down or overheat or be a problem for you. You don't need problems in the middle of the job. So please feel confident it's worth spending the extra money on high quality cables to get the performance and the job you want done efficiently and fast. So I'm going to finish on that note. Thank you for bearing with me on all my little quirks and little tips and tricks, but I will just finish off on one other funny little anecdote while I'm here, and that is tools and Allen keys. Look, I have professional sets of Allen keys. When I say professional, I got metric and I got an imperial set of Allen keys. I purchased these so I knew I had every size I ever needed when I'm out and about or using. But just as a quirky note, in this little box here, I have various sets of Allen keys. Now I'll take this little sample pack. It's only a few Allen keys that I use for my tripods and camera gear all consistently. So that little satchel in a plastic bag is brilliant, because what that means is that when I throw it in my camera bag, it's not scratching anything. These sharp little edges on the Allen keys, not rubbing up against lenses or camera bodies and causing any mayhem or chaos. It also keeps them together where I can find them quickly. So sticking that into a little pouch in your camera bag is a great idea to have some tools with you. But in just general, have a look at this item here. I've got so many Allen keys. What are all these things from? I tell you, it's funny, you know, they're all from buying stuff. I buy camera gears, I buy accessories, like I was showing you before, this cotton carrier rig. And every time you buy a cotton carrier rig, what do you get? An Allen key. Every time I buy a tripod, I get an Allen key. Every time I buy a little mount or bracket, what do you get? You get an Allen key. And now I've collected this. I've got about 100 Allen keys in here of various sizes. I'm never going to need to buy another Allen key for the rest of my life. But it's just funny how many you can accumulate in a few years of photography from buying gear. So if you think I don't buy much stuff, this is actually evidence that yes, I do buy a lot of stuff because of all the accessories I've got that come with them. So I just thought I'd show you that as a bit of an amusement and a laugh, really, more than anything. The other tool I do find very useful, and I have this in my camera bag as well. Be aware that when you bring something like this, it could be used as a weapon or something and people could be offended, so just be careful. But it's just a general Leatherman's tool. It has a pair of pliers and it's handy for tightening up nuts or screwing things in. But apart from that, it has various tools in it. It has screwdrivers, bottle openers, can openers, things like that, but of course it also has knives. So just be aware that it could be considered a dangerous little weapon in certain locations, but very handy if you're innocently just taking photos out in the wild, like landscape or birding, and you need a general purpose tool to make sure things are fixed and working. This is a very useful apparatus. So that's something else that I highly recommend you take with you in the appropriate context. I don't know if you'd want to take that on an aeroplane in your pocket. I think you might get in a bit of trouble. But thank you very much for bearing with me. I hope you learned something from all that and share the excitement of Nikon's firmware upgrades and new product releases.